It was supposed to be a normal school day, but by the final bell, all anyone could hear were screams. I had just transferred to Southern Lehigh High School in Pennsylvania as a junior, and starting out without knowing anyone was tough. Everyone already had their established groups, and trying to fit in felt impossible. But the part I dreaded the most was lunch. Juniors weren't allowed to leave campus for lunch. Only seniors could. So I was stuck eating in the cafeteria. I knew I'd have no one to sit with and didn't want to awkwardly join a random table. When lunch finally rolled around, I walked in holding my tray and searched for a seat. Every table was full. There wasn't even a spot where I could sit alone. Except for one table tucked in the corner where only two guys were sitting. It seemed like the least stressful place to go, so I walked over and asked if I could join them. They glanced at each other. Then one said, "Yeah, sure." As I sat down, I realized they were twins, identical. They looked like they might have some Hispanic background, but they didn't have any accent. They seemed fine. They introduced themselves as Antonio and Bruno and started chatting with me. They even invited me to hang out after school. I figured I needed to start somewhere, so I said sure. I got their numbers, went home after class to drop off my stuff, and a bit later, Bruno texted me. He said he and his brother were planning to chill and wanted to meet around 9 p.m. by the cemetery near my house, a short 10-minute walk. He said there was a cool place nearby. Since school started on a Friday, we had the weekend off, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I agreed. Later that night, Bruno messaged me again to check if I was still coming. I replied that I was heading out soon and confirmed we were meeting by the cemetery road. He said yes. So I left, walking through the dark, and my mind wandered to everything. Being the new kid, moving to a new place, and the weird reality of going to meet two kids I barely knew, next to a graveyard. I reached the road by the cemetery and texted Bruno, asking where they were. He replied quickly and said they were in the woods by a small lake they wanted to show me. He sent his location right after that. I followed the pin, walking deeper into the trees, brushing away branches, using my tiny phone flashlight to see. I called out their names as I approached the spot. Suddenly, I heard slow footsteps nearby. I stopped and listened. Someone was definitely approaching. I called out, warning them not to try and scare me, but no answer. I decided this was dumb and turned to head back to the road. That's when the footsteps turned fast, and before I could react, someone grabbed me from behind, nails digging into my neck like a chokehold. I heard a voice yell, "Grab him! Grab him!" I somehow broke free and sprinted toward the road. I heard them chase me until I reached the tree line, but I was faster, and I didn't stop running until I got home. I told my parents everything. They wanted to call the police, but we agreed to document the scratches on my neck and report it to the school the next day. With the text from Bruno as evidence, the school expelled both students. My parents had me block their numbers. I didn't object. They asked if the boys knew where we lived. I said, not as far as I knew. But about a week later, something happened. I woke up one night freezing. I noticed wind blowing into my room and saw that my window was fully open. It made no sense. Why would my mom open it? It was only about 50 degrees outside. I went to check and looked down. Below my window was a ledge, part of the house's outer structure. My dad had told me once to use it in case of a fire. I closed the window and walked to my parents' room. I gently knocked and asked my mom if she opened my window. She sat up, confused, saying no. I told her again, louder and more alarmed, that someone had opened my window. She shook my dad awake and he groggily dismissed it, saying I was overreacting and to go back to sleep. As I walked back, I noticed something strange. My bedroom door, which I had left fully open, was now half shut. I felt something was off. I gently nudged it open, peering through the gap, just in case, and that's when I saw it. Someone was hiding behind my door. I screamed, loudly, for my dad. My door suddenly slammed shut just as he rushed out. I yelled that someone was in my room, and he burst in, flipping the light on. At that moment, we saw a leg disappearing out the window. My dad ran to the window and then bolted downstairs and outside, trying to catch whoever it was. He returned minutes later, panting, saying he saw no one. But I knew it had to be those twins. The police were called. I had to retell the entire story, including what happened in the woods. My dad backed me up. But without clear evidence, the police said there wasn't much they could do. They just advised us to keep everything locked and maybe install cameras. Even though I'm certain it was them, nothing else ever happened. I spent the next couple of months sleeping with one eye open. Looking back, I still can't believe I agreed to meet two strangers in the woods at night. I should have known from that very first day in the cafeteria. Those guys were bad news. It was freshman year 2007, last period of the day, gym class. We had a substitute teacher that day, and the weather outside was awful. Pouring rain, wind, thunder. The sub was an older man, probably around 55 or 60, graying but not elderly. When he took attendance, he paused when he got to me. Stared a bit too long. It made me uncomfortable. I mean, not to sound full of myself, but I always knew I looked more mature than most freshmen. He told us to split into volleyball teams, then disappeared into the hallway near the locker rooms. Time passed. About 40 minutes went by, and the bell rang. Class was over. We headed to the locker room to change. When I got to mine, I realized my locker wouldn't open. I tried the combo again and again, but it just wouldn't click. I figured I might have forgotten it, so I went to find the sub and ask for help. He told me to give him a few minutes while he looked for the list of locker combinations. I waited by the office, and eventually he came out holding a book, open to a certain page. To my surprise, he walked with me into the girls' locker room. There was only one girl still inside finishing up changing. He went straight to my locker and tried the combo from the list, but it didn't work. He tried again and again, laughing after every failed attempt while glancing at me. I gave nervous little laughs back, not wanting to be rude, but it started to feel off. Then he placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "We'll get this figured out." As he kept trying the combo, his hand began slowly sliding from my shoulder toward my lower back. That's when I pulled away, grabbed my bag, and said, "It's fine, I'm late for my bus." He tried the combo one more time, and suddenly, it worked. He smiled and walked off. I waited until I heard the locker room door close behind him. Then I changed quickly. But just as I finished pulling my pants on, the lights went out. Total darkness. I slammed my locker shut, threw on my backpack, and headed toward the back exit that led outside. I had a bad feeling. I was sure he might be waiting near the door. As I reached the corner between locker rows, I instinctively looked to my right, and in the faint light coming from a small high-up window, I saw him. He was peeking around the edge of the lockers, watching me. That's when I ran. He called out, "Wait, wait! It's not what it looks like." But I didn't stop. I burst out into the rain, off school grounds, and walked the whole way home soaking wet. By the time I got home, I realized he might have purposely changed my locker combo to trap me alone in that room. I didn't even want to think about what he planned when he turned the lights off. I was too shaken to tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends. Even now, I've never told this story out loud. It's something I've just buried all these years, because it still makes me feel ashamed. Back when I was in high school, I chose to join the school band. It was either that, choir, or orchestra, and I figured band was the best option. Our band director, Mr. Nicholson, had a simple grading system. If you showed up to class and attended your weekly lessons, you'd get an A. Unfortunately, near the end of one term, I had missed 2 of my lessons, which brought my grade down to a B. After class, I asked Mr. Nicholson if I could make up the missed sessions. He didn't seem too eager, but eventually agreed to let me come in during lunch and practice in one of the basement storage rooms. That would count as a makeup lesson. I was totally fine with that. Honestly, I was planning to just sit and play on my phone instead of actually practicing anyway. So the next day, I showed up during my lunch period, grabbed my saxophone, and headed downstairs to the music department's basement. That place always felt a bit eerie. It was dimly lit and rarely used by anyone except the teachers. I'd only been down there a couple of times before. As I walked down the narrow hallway, I saw the usual row of small rooms, each about 7 feet square. They were mostly used for storing chairs, instruments, decorations, and other random stuff. I picked one, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me. I placed my sheet music on the stand just in case Mr. Nicholson came to check on me, though I didn't plan on actually playing. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and started gaming. Then, the lights suddenly went out, leaving only the glow of my phone screen. Out of instinct, I flicked the light switch a few times, but nothing happened. I got up, stumbled toward the door, and opened it into total darkness. Using my phone screen for a tiny bit of light, I think I had an iPhone 3 back then, no flashlight, I stepped into the hall. Just barely, I could make out that one of the doors at the end of the hallway was now open. I heard something heavy being dragged inside, like a plastic storage bin. Then, I heard strange, heavy breathing and animal-like grunts. A large plastic container came sliding out of that room into the hallway. I quickly shut off my phone screen and slipped back into my storage room, closing the door silently behind me. I wasn't sure why, but something about the blackout and the sounds gave me a bad feeling. Whoever that was had blocked the path to the stairs, and to make things worse, I had no signal down there. I just sat quietly in the darkness, hoping the lights would come back on. But when they didn't, I decided to try sneaking back upstairs. I slowly opened the door, phone in hand for light, and crept into the hallway again. As I inched toward the stairs, I heard a sound and quickly ducked into another nearby room, gently pulling the door shut. I still didn't know what or who I was hiding from. Maybe it was just a janitor or staff member. But something felt off, and then I got that feeling. You know when someone's in the room with you, even if you don't hear them? That sudden gut sense of presence? I had that. With my hand shaking, I pressed the home button on my phone to light up the screen for a second. That 1 second was enough to see someone standing in the corner of the room, just 3 feet away from me. I pretended I hadn't seen them, but it was too late. They spoke, breaking the silence, and I felt a hand tap my shoulder, then start squeezing. Panicked, I reached for the door, fumbling to find the knob. I finally yanked it open. The person inside tried to slam it shut again, but I was already out. I ran up the stairs, out into the main level of the music hall, where the lights were still on. I found Mr. Nicholson and, out of breath, told him everything. He called security, who went downstairs to check the basement. When they came back up, they said the only thing out of place was that some equipment had been moved. No one was down there. Mr. Nicholson canceled his next lesson, and I sat in the room with him and a few flute students, telling them everything in detail. Without any cameras in the basement, there was no way to find whoever cut the lights and snuck in. We figured they were trying to steal equipment, or something worse. The next day, I was called into the dean's office to recount the story, and that was the end of it.